I learned early that fences say more about the people who build them than the land they're meant to protect. Some fences are practical barbed wire shrugging off the weight of bored cows. Others are statements, iron and ornate, the kind that whispers we have money and we're afraid. And some were just lines drawn in a place the earth never asked for. Those were my favorite. Those were invitations that pretended to be warnings. I didn't start out brave. I started out alone. I was the kid who ate lunch in the library and memorized the dust patterns on the windowsills. Silence and I understood each other. It knew how to hold me without demanding anything back. But silence has doors in it. If you listen long enough, hairline cracks that open into the rest of the world. Mine opened the first time I hopped a chain-link fence behind Harrow Elementary and walked into the abandoned maintenance shed. The smell of motor oil and mouse droppings, the thin drumbeat of rain on a tin roof. The way my breath made a little fog in the cold, every sense sharpened to a pin. No one knew I was there. The secret held me like a hand. After that, the universe unfolded as a map of forbidden edges. I collected them the way other kids collected friends. The disused rail spur with the sun-blistered boxcars that creaked after dusk. The cemetery on Finch Street where the ground remembered names better than people did. A red brick shoe factory gutted by fire, but still wearing its charred beams like ribs. I learned how to move without echo and what to do with fear when it rose, a simple, deliberate thing. Note it, narrow your breathing, keep going. Everything changed when I learned to drive. The radius of my life blew out like a spore cloud. Suddenly, there were farm roads with no shoulders and dead malls with whole galaxies of shuttered storefronts. There were grain silos that hummed at night for no good reason, and water towers that collected rumors along with rust. I made a loose crew, then Marcus with the endless cigarette tucked behind his ear, Jenna who laughed too loud and then apologized to Sky, and Luis, practical to the bone, our designated driver and reluctant conscience. We didn't say trespass. We said walk it. We said let's take a look. We said 5 minutes. And men an hour. The night of the horses didn't start out different. It was late September, cool enough that our breath showed when we joked. We were parked on the shoulder off County Road 6, stereo down, headlights off. The moon was high and clear, the coins you see in movies, not the greasy fingerprint that usually hangs over town. A dark smear of trees crowned the field like a low tide. Somewhere nearby, wind chimes rang where there wasn't any wind. You sure it's empty? Luis asked, because Luis always asked. Place has been for sale for years. Marcus said. Old man died. Nephew lives upstate. Says here he keeps a few horses boarded, that's it. He tapped a Zillow listing on his phone. A gallery of cheerful photos taken in better daylight, the farmhouse in its Sunday best. Porch peeling but proud, a long L-shaped barn with a green roof. The description promised a peaceful country escape, which is how realtors say too far from neighbors to hear you scream. Jenna squinted through the windshield. Did you hear that? We turned off the engine. The night expanded in the vacuum it left. Crickets sawed at the edges of the road. A single horse snorted, the sound wet and emphatic, like a kid clearing his throat in church. That should have made me relax. Instead, I felt the first prickle along my scalp, the old intuition that something in the dark remembers you. 5 minutes, I said. We cut across, peek at the barn, and leave. No going inside if it's locked. No touching the tack. No names on anything. Who writes their name on a horse? Jenna asked, but softly. We crossed the ditch, climbed the wire fence quick 2 hands. One soft push on the top strand. Slip a leg over, swing, drop. I felt the post give a little under my palm. Not rotted bent. Something had leaned hard against it recently. We slid into the field, the grass up to our calves. Cold and wet with dew that hadn't had time to form. The horse smell grew stronger. Manure, warm animal. The kind of smell that makes you think alive. The moon flattened the land. It erased depth so that the farmhouse looked paced to the horizon, a stage set with a door you could never reach. The barn, though the barn had weight, its shadow pooled thick, and the kind of quiet around it wasn't the quiet of sleeping. It was the quiet that comes when someone holds their breath just before they speak. We saw the horses then, maybe 5 of them clustered near the fence on the far side. They raised their heads in eerie synchrony. turned toward us and froze, necks long and silver by moonlight. A horse is a prey animal, a bundle of nerves tuned to flee. These inflict their ears. They didn't shift. Their stillness wasn't fright, it was attention, like the stillness a cat makes before pouncing, wrong on an animal that size. "Hello there, babies," Jenna called, instinctively soft, hands out, palms down. Her voice blew across the field and fell apart. Nobody moved, not even the insects in the ditch. I realized then what had bothered me since we killed the engine. It wasn't what we heard on the road. It was what we didn't hear here. No chorus of frogs. No moths batting themselves stupid against the barn light. The air felt filtered, a room tone stripped of its hiss. "Where are the goats?" Marcus muttered. "There's always goats with horses. Chickens, dogs. Something to make a mess." "Maybe the boarders moved them," Louis said, but he sounded like he didn't believe himself. We kept toward the fence, the ground lumpy with hoof prints hardened into little bowls. In one bowl, a puddle held the moon, ruffled with a breeze that didn't touch our faces. A strand of the wire sagged near a crooked post, bright with new staples hammered in wrong, like someone had fixed it after a hurry. I brushed my fingers across a slick patch of dirt near the post and brought them to my nose. Bleach. The bite of it made my eyes water. "Someone cleaned up here," I said. "Trespassers clean up now?" Marcus tried to joke, but his voice faltered. The horses tracked us with those dark lake eyes as we drew close. Up near the fence, the smell changed, less hay, more iron. I didn't have a word for it until my tongue found metallic ghosted on my teeth. Blood. "Okay," Louis said, measured, calm. "We should go." I would have agreed, if not for faintest click from within the barn, like a latch easing into place, like someone who wanted a door to sound quiet, not silent. My curiosity rose up like an old friend and put its arm around my fear. The horses didn't flinch. One of them breathed out slow and heavy, the sound not quite a snore, not quite a sigh. I put my hand to the fence post to steady myself, felt the splinter crown of it slide under my palm fresh, where something had snapped and been cut clean after. 5 minutes, I whispered, mostly to myself, and leaned toward the dark where the click had come from. The click came again, tiny, deliberate, like a fingernail on glass. The barn door wasn't quite shut. A bar of black separated from its jamb. I pressed 2 fingers to the edge, and the wood was colder than the night. The smell that leaked out wasn't ranked the way barns get. It was a hotel bathroom, smell bleach, lemon, something meant to promise clean. The promise didn't land. "Don't," Louise whispered. "We look," I said. Because the word had already left my mouth and become a plan, I eased the door. Hinges groaned a note, so thin it felt like it happened behind my eyes. Our phone screens lit the darkness with rectangles of blue. The light caught dust, or tried to. There wasn't much dust to catch. The aisle was a black tongue lined with stalls, each rubber matted, each swept to a surgeon's daydream. A hose lay in patient spirals like a sleeping snake. The nozzle dripped with the patience of a metronome. Jenna went soft-footed past me, palms open like she could soothe the shadows the way she did children at Sunday school. Marcus ducked under the low tack room door frame, his breath loud because he was trying to make it sound normal. Louis stayed where the night could still reach him, a hand on the latch, the other flexing like he was waking up each finger by name. Inside, the sound changed. It wasn't exactly silence. It was the opposite of echo. Every step felt absorbed. Someone had tacked extra boards over the interior walls, and the boards were a gray foam flesh, the kind you use to hush the world in recording studios. A barn in a soundproof suit. I made myself breathe smaller. "Jesus," Marcus said from the tack room, "they could do surgery in here." "Or hide the fact that they already did," Jenna said, then bit her lip, as if she'd broken a rule about saying true things too loud. There were hooks on the tack wall labeled with neat numbers, and under the numbers hung halters and lead ropes, each coiled exact. Above them, a whiteboard gleamed like an eye. "Feed, 1/4 scoop on calm nights. Keep heads up after dark. Chimes OFF when doors closed." The handwriting was all compact print, the kind of hand that knows how much space it intends to take up and refuses to exceed it. "Chimes," I said. The wind chimes we'd heard on the road, with no wind. Somewhere in here, the night was being told how to behave. The stalls were empty. No manure, no damp hay compacts, no rough horsehairs caught on latches. Too empty. A long grate cut the aisle floor from end to end, a drain channel that suggested messes had been expected and escorted away. The metal smelled like a swallowed penny. At the far end, a sliding door wore a new handle that didn't match the barn's shiny hardware store chrome. The screws didn't sit flush. Someone had changed in a hurry or under a different kind of light. Beside it hung a row of bells on twine, long as a forearm made of thin brass cups. Their mouths were taped. A single strip of painter's tape, blue as a bruise, sealed each bell shut. Marcus whistled under his breath, too impressed to be scared just then. Who tapes a bell? Someone who doesn't want to call whatever the bell calls, Louis said from behind us, and the way he said whatever made my scalp tighten. We split like we always did. Jenna and I up the aisle, Marcus rooting in the tack room for printed ghosts, Luis ghosting us as insurance. My light snagged on something bright. At knee level, a series of shallow scratches dug into the wooden upright between two stalls. Dated 9/3, 9 out of 10, September 17th. Next to the last one, a half-started line. The tip of the knife or nail had slipped, scored a little arc that didn't become a tally. My gut knew what the marks meant before my mind did. Not days, not feet amounts. Tallies you make when you need to mark this happen again. Look, Jenna said, and I followed her beam to a corkboard nailed just inside the tack room. Polaroids, 2 to a row for rows. The top left was a hazy daylight shot of the pasture. Next to it, a horse with its head high, ears arrowed to some sound. The next pair, the fence line at night, wire silver as fish bones. Then 3 kids on the wrong side of it, cheeks lit by a phone. One wore a Rolling Stones tee I had seen a dozen times downtown. I knew that boy. He worked the register at the BP by the highway and looked like he slept in the months between shifts. In the picture, he grinned half dare, half prayer. The next row, a coyote, then the same fence empty under a fatter moon. The bottom row, the shoulder on County Road 6. A dark sedan nose into ditch just so. Headlights dead. A figure in the driver's seat with their head bent, lit by ghostly blue. My car, my head, what the Marcus started, and right then the click happened again, nearer. The sound didn't carry like a footstep. It folded. We raised our phones as if they could shield us. The beams bit into the hayloft ladder and climbed. On the rafters, a small square I stared back trail cam, glossy with animal patience. Its tiny red jewel pulsed once, then went steady. The click had been the relay. The little throat-clearing device does right before it swallows you whole. Somebody's watching us, Luis said. He didn't make a question. He put his hand on my shoulder, not to restrain me, but to claim a piece of me before the dark did. We're done. We were not done. Curiosity in me is two-headed. One head listens to reason and nods and says of course. The other one cups my chin and turns my face toward the thing I should ignore. The tape bells, the whiteboard's instructions about heads up, the scratch marks that were trying to tell me something with their unfinished fifth line. I wanted to gather the pieces and build the story they made. I needed to understand what kind of quiet demanded foam on a barn. 2 minutes, I said. Then we bounce. Luis closed his eyes once like a man making a hard loan. 1, he said. We moved as a knot. The loft ladder's rungs had been scrubbed until it showed bone, and there were pale threads snagged along one side. Not hay, not twine. Tail hair. My brain supplied without being asked. Above, the loft broke into dark geometry. Joists like ribs, pallets stacked with feed bags that wore anonymous brown like plainclothes, a nest of something shred into strips. My light skated over a pile, and the pile flinched. A shape slunk deeper into shadow, something small, low to the boards. Cat, fox, raccoon, I wanted any of those. But the outline didn't commit to any animal I knew. It moved wrong, like memory misremembered. Behind us, the horses outside exhaled as one. Not frightened, not bored. A kind of acknowledgement, like a choir finding the note before the hymn starts. Jenna's hand found mine. They're not watching us, she whispered. They're watching the door. We turned as a group. The sliding door with a new handle had shifted a thumb's width on its track. Not enough to be a draft, not enough to be an accident. The tape bells trembled a little, tape wrinkling as if something had tasted the idea of ringing and been refused. Somewhere above our range, the night pulled in its breath. Now, Louise said, and this time the word was a rope. We moved. We made 5 steps before the camera clicked again closer, not from the rafters. The new sound had a throat and a hunger. It wasn't a little relay cough. It was a shudder. No flash, just the mouth of a thing taking us. The shudder sound hung in the rafters long after it should have died, as if the barn itself had lungs and was savoring what it had just inhaled. None of us spoke. Words would have been too human, and we were in a place that had stopped belonging to people. Luis reacted first. He yanked Jenna toward the aisle, his grip so tight it left little crescents on her wrist. Marcus swore under his breath and knocked into a feed sack, sending a puff of meal into the air. The dust glittered in our phone beams like snow caught in headlights. For a split second, it looked like the particles weren't falling but rising, like gravity had been told to hold its breath, too. Then came the horses. Their hooves struck the ground outside in a single, unified rhythm thud. Thud. Thud as if an invisible conductor had given them a cue. Not running, not bolting, marching, pacing the fence in a circle. My chest tightened. Horses don't march. Go, Luis barked. His voice had an edge of command I'd never heard before, as if something in him had decided survival didn't need consensus. We pushed for the door. My hand grazed one of the tape bells, and for a fraction of a second, I thought about ripping the tape off just to know what sound was meant to hide. Curiosity scratched at me like claws inside my ribs. But Jenna shoved me hard, breaking the thought in half, and we spilled out into the night. The cold air hit like surf. For a moment, it felt clean, the way surf feels. Then I realized it wasn't cold enough for the fog I saw curling from our mouths. The air was moving wrong, drifting sideways as if the barn itself was exhaling behind us. The horses had clustered along the near fence, heads high, eyes glinting. They weren't afraid. They weren't relieved. They were waiting. Keys, Marcus hissed, already sprinting for the ditch. We tore across the field, through soaking our jeans, our steps too loud in the hush. Behind us, the barn door scraped open another inch, slow and heavy, like whatever was inside had all the time in the world. My foot caught a rut, and I went down hard, palms burning against gravel. When I looked up, I saw the ditch in silhouette, and beyond it, our car. But it wasn't as we'd left it. The headlights glowed. The cabin light was on. The driver's door hung open, a wedge of brightness cutting the dark. And in the seat by seat a figure sat with its hands folded calmly on its knees. Who the hell, Marcus started, but Luis clamped a hand over his mouth. Don't look at it, Luis whispered. Just don't. The figure turned its head toward us, smooth as a weather vane catching wind. The glow from the dome light was enough to show its face wasn't a face at all. Not blank, not masked, just unfinished, like a sketch abandoned before the details were filled in. Eyes suggested but not drawn. A mouth more idea than flesh. The sight punched a hole in my thoughts. I had nothing to compare it to. Jenna gagged. The sound must have carried, because the figure tilted its head in recognition. That tiny motion jolted us like a gunshot. We bolted for the fence. Marcus hit it first, hauling himself over with the panic of a man climbing out of water. Jenna scrambled after, nearly tearing her jeans on the barbs. Luis pushed me up and over before he even thought about climbing. My shirt snagged and ripped, but I didn't care. I hit the gravel on the roadside and rolled, spitting dirt. Luis! Jenna screamed. He was halfway across when the horses moved. Not at us, at him. Their synchronized pacing broke, and they pressed against the wire, bodies straining, eyes locked on him. The wire groaned and then snapped, a staple tearing loose with sound like bone popping. Luis cleared the fence just as one of the animals shoved its chest into the gap. The barbs caught in its skin, but it didn't flinch. It leaned through like a thing too sure of itself to register pain. Its head thrust forward, teeth bared not in fear or warning, but in mimicry, like it was trying to remember how a predator smiled. We ran, Gravel sprayed under our sneakers as we sprinted for the car. The dome light winked out as we closed in, as though the figure in the seat had killed it to make itself part of the dark. Marcus yanked the back door. Empty. The smell inside was bleach and iron, sharp enough to stab behind the eyes. I hurled myself into the passenger seat, Jenna into the back. Louis slid behind the wheel and jammed the key into the ignition with hands, shaking hard enough to rattle the steering column. The car roared awake. Headlights flared, blinding the ditch grass. For a heartbeat, the figure was gone. Then it was just there, standing where the open door had been, face still unfocused, but closer now. Too close. Louise floored it. The tires screamed against gravel, then bit hard. The car leapt forward, throwing us back in our seats. The figure didn't move. It didn't have to. The image of it unfinished, uninvited, burned itself into the rear view, like it had followed us without taking a step. We didn't speak for miles. The silence was too thick, too absolute, as though the barn had sewn itself into our ears. Only when the lights of town flickered on the horizon did Jenna finally whisper, "It saw us." Her words unlocked something awful in me. Not it saw us, but it kept the picture. That shudder sound, the way it had swallowed the moment whole, I realized we hadn't just been watched. We'd been collected. And a part 3. Do you want me to continue with part 4? Part 4 final. 1:050 words to close the story at 4:000 total. The drive back into town should have felt like safety. Street lamps, gas stations, the familiar clutter of billboards and power lines, normal life, insisting itself onto the night. But inside the car, none of us spoke. It was as if we were afraid that putting the wrong shape into words would let something else finish the sentence for us. Louise kept checking the rear view, even though nothing followed. The road behind was empty, just taillights receding from trucks long gone. Still, every time his eyes flicked a mirror, I saw his knuckles whiten. Finally, Marcus broke. "That thing, in the car, did you see its face?" "Don't." Louis snapped, sharper than I'd ever heard him. "I'm just saying, don't say it." Louis cut in, his voice tight, almost shaking. "Don't put it into words. You name something, you help it hold shape." The way he said it like a rule passed down, not invented, made the hair at the back of my neck rise. Jenna leaned forward between the seats. "It wasn't finished," she whispered, like it was waiting for something to finish it. Us. That landed like a stone in my gut. I remembered the Polaroids on the corkboard, the tally marks scratched into wood, the tape bells, all unfinished things, as if someone or something was keeping a record, waiting for the last stroke of the pen to close the story. We dropped Marcus at his place first. He didn't argue. He didn't even look back at us, just bolted across his yard and into his house, door slamming behind him. The porch light flared bright, then fizzled. Jenna's house was second. She made us promise to text the moment we got home. "If you don't," she said, her eyes wide and glassy, "I'll know why." She tried to laugh after, but the sound was cracked glass. That left me and Louise. The silence between us was thicker than before, but different. Less fear, more calculation. He wasn't just shaken, he was thinking. "You've done this before," I said finally. He glanced at me, startled. "What?" "The way you knew not to say things out loud. The way you kept pushing us to leave. This wasn't new to you." His jaw flexed. He didn't answer until we pulled into my driveway. He killed the engine, but neither of us moved. The house loomed dark, and for the first time it didn't feel like shelter, it felt like a box I might get sealed into. "I grew up out here," Louise said quietly. "There are places, barns, cellars, fields, places that aren't exactly empty but aren't meant for people. My uncle told me once, some land remembers too much. Some of it wants to keep remembering. You don't go poking at it, or it'll remember you." His words fit too well with what I'd seen. That clicking shutter, the unfinished face, the Polaroids pinned in rows. We hadn't just trespassed, we'd stepped into memory that didn't belong to us, and it had decided to hold us. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the car dome light glowing with that figure in the seat. Worse, I heard the horses marching, perfectly in time, like they were rehearsing for something. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. A picture message. No text, just an image. I almost dropped the phone. It was me, crouched in the barn aisle, light cutting across my face. The angle was from above, as if taken from a loft. The timestamp in the corner was tonight, but the photo showed me staring straight up at the camera, eyes wide. I never looked up. I turned the phone off, stuffed it under a pillow like that would smother it, but the darkness felt crowded. Every creak of the house became a shudder sound. At dawn I drove. No plan, no destination. Just drive until I could feel the world fill itself back in. I ended up at the diner near the highway, where the coffee tastes like cardboard and the waitresses know every trucker by name. The normalcy helped. People talking about football and sales tax, not barns and faceless things. Then I noticed a bulletin board by the counter. Community flyers, garage sales, missing pets. My stomach dropped. Tacked in the corner was a Polaroid. A boy with shaggy hair and a Rolling Stones tee, same kid I'd seen on the corkboard in the barn. Missing since September 17th, printed in block letters beneath. I left without paying. The weeks that followed blurred. Jenna stopped answering texts. Marcus claimed he didn't remember anything beyond some weird barn and refused to talk about it. Luis, he avoided me. Maybe because he knew I couldn't let it go. Because I didn't. The pull of it grew worse. Every time I drove near County Road 6, my hands wanted to turn the wheel. My dreams filled with the sound of bells muffled by tape, straining to ring. The tally marks itched behind my eyes, unfinished, begging for that last stroke. I held out until late October. Then one night, the pull became too much. I drove back, alone. The barn was waiting, porch still peeling, roof still proud, fields silver by moonlight. The horses weren't at the fence this time. They were in the pasture, standing in a circle, heads all pointed inward, like worshippers at some dark altar. The door slid open easier than before. Inside, the air still smelled of bleach and iron. The corkboard was bare now. Only the push bins remained, glinting like teeth. I walked the aisle, each step slow, careful, as if I were afraid of waking something. At the tack room, I saw the whiteboard. New handwriting, same precise style. Feed, 1/4 scoop on calm nights. Keep heads up after dark. Chimes OFF when doors closed. And under it, a new line, collection complete. Faces finished. My throat closed. I stumbled back, light shaking across the stalls. Everyone was occupied now. Figures stood in them, not horses, not people. Some half-formed, some too real, all unfinished faces made whole. They stared at me with eyes that seemed to remember me before I could even form the thought of leaving. Behind me, the bells rattled. The tape peeled itself free, one strip after another, falling like blue tongues. The sound that followed was no chime I'd ever heard. It was a harmony of iron and bone, a hymn that made my teeth ache. The last thing I remember before the world went white was the click of shutter, louder than ever, taking me in. I woke in my car at dawn, parked in my own driveway. No memory of driving home. No memory of leaving the barn. On the passenger seat sat a Polaroid, face down. I haven't turned it over, but sometimes when the house is quiet, I hear horses marching outside. Perfect rhythm. Waiting.